Welcome, Mark Middleton, Director of People and Culture here at GRAYBOX. So I help bring in great people into GRAYBOX, help nurture and educate while they're here, and share the wisdom of GRAYBOX throughout the community, which is part of this event. So thank you for coming, and Alicia Nagel is our Senior Marketing Strategist here at GRAYBOX. And we really look forward to hearing this, and take it away.
Okay. Those of you unfamiliar with GRAYBOX, we're a digital consulting firm. We do pretty much everything that has a pixel on it, we do it. So apps, websites, digital transformation, like taking companies from clipboard to the cloud, especially if you're like a tangible manufacturing type company. We also do marketing, obviously, that's my department, strategy, and business consulting, and app development. Like I said, all things digital. If you want something printed on paper, we might not be your person. We just got a stapler a couple months ago, so. So that's GRAYBOX, welcome, thanks for coming. So today we're here to learn about branding. And just a quick overview of what we'll cover. The ROI of marketing efforts. At GRAYBOX, we're really big on making sure that we do things that are worth our partners' while. You'll hear me refer to partners a few times. We call our clients partners. Sometimes if I'm remembering, I'll call them client partners so that you know what I'm talking about. But if you hear partners, it means clients. We'll define branding and talk about how to discover your brand story. So whether or not it's your company or your personal brand or your organization, all that applies. And then how to put brand strategy and customer insights to work. And then lastly, I'll give you guys some tools so that you can kick things off on your own if you're excited to do so. So first of all, branding is not really a new concept at this point. We have all heard as a buzzword, and in 2014, Forbes magazine was warning us that customers are going to want more. They're going to start expecting you to be like a cool company and like give a crap about what you do. And here we are in 2017, and the predictions are that we're throwing out brands, but we're really doing branding. I'm sorry, but it's the same thing. If we're talking to real people and real tones of voice, and we're becoming the interface between consumers and products again, it's still brand strategy. So we're just being iterated that it's still important, and as a practice, it's sort of growing up and maturing, I guess, if you will, in the marketing world. So at the beginning, I talked about ROI, return on investment. So anyone who went to marketing school or business school is familiar with the classic marketing pipeline. You blast your message at a bunch of people, that's the purple column. Some of it sticks, they turn into leads, and then some of those leads turn into actual business opportunities, and the number of people that make their way through the process gets smaller and smaller. And then the holy grail is retention if your clients stay with you over a long period of time. I like to say that brand strategy sort of like cuts off the wings of this, and I like to call it the classic sales tube or the sales pipeline. If you are more targeted about who you're talking to and you're a little bit more selective about what you're saying, suddenly you don't spray your message out to everybody. You're just identifying the people who are most interested, and so the amount of effort that you have to put in to get your client retention is much less in the long run. Super exciting for businesses who have limited marketing budgets and those of us who don't just want to like spin our wheels needlessly. So ultimately, I like to say that brand strategy is about saying the right thing in the right way to the right people at the right time. And it sounds simple, but we didn't always used to do this. For example, if we look at some of the legacy advertising, they wanted to sell it to everybody. Everybody needs a car. Why would you not need a car? It's the 80s, you need a car. But we're getting a little bit more sophisticated in our tactics over time. And even some of those older commercials were getting a little bit more hip to this and starting to tell stories instead of just selling features. One of my favorites is, Calgon, take me away. We still use this stupid phrase now to insinuate a feeling. And the reason why it stays with us so much, they're not showing you pictures of bath salts and like lotion and stuff like that. They're selling you an experience, a feeling. And that really captures and sticks with us. And this is the result of brand strategy. Turns out scientists also agree with us. Transportation, as in not a train, but like transporting your mental state to somewhere else, was proposed as a mechanism. Keep in mind these are scientists, so mechanism, they're using like words that we don't normally use. Transportation was proposed as a mechanism whereby narratives, so stories, can affect beliefs. Do I need this backwash or do I not need it? So defined as absorption into a story, transportation entails imagery, effect, and attention focus. Basically, it's kind of like a commercial if you think about it, or marketing messaging. On the other hand, if you don't do it, you don't get results. Same thing. And really more interesting to me is that it doesn't matter if people are clear that you're telling them a story versus telling them facts. There's this willing suspension of disbelief. And people are okay with that as long as you're telling them an interesting story. And so ultimately, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Kissmetrics, but they're like an SEO company. They cited this study and said, basically, if you want to persuade your customers and create a memorable experience at the same time, you must master the psychology of storytelling. And brand strategy and storytelling are very much hand in hand. What does this look like in practice? We looked at the Calgon ad and those dorky Mustang commercials. Well, for example, how about this one? Right away, you're sucked into a story. You know it's for Audi, and you start to tell the story to yourself in your head. Clearly, the guy is having so much fun driving the car that their getaway driver just like forgot to pick up the guys at the bank. Or how about this one? Where all of a sudden you're imagining you're driving the car and it's cozy and safe and climate controlled and cushy, and your kid is in the back seat just like playing. It's selling a feeling much more than it is selling features. So again, these stories, the getaway car and the Ford one, are very different, right? The family versus like a sports car, the experience that they're selling is very different, and they're not afraid to not talk to everybody, right? They're starting to cut off the wings of that marketing triangle, and as you're doing that, you're being a little bit more honest about who's actually interested in your product. And so suddenly, instead of talking to the masses, you're just talking to a few people who you've identified are going to be interested. So I like to say the key to all this is knowing who you are as a brand or a company or whatever, and then identifying those people and just honing your message. So we'll unpack a little bit how to do this today. One thing I'd like to make clear is your brand is not your logo. Says who? Not only me, but Seth Godin. He's like one of the forefathers of branding. He's written a ton of books. Super interesting guy if you're interested in reading up on this stuff. Also the Harvard Business Review, and I guess maybe if you're talking about cows, then it would be a brand with a logo, and that's how it got started. But it's more about leaving a mark in the memory of your audience and less a physical one. So if you wanted a written definition of brand strategy, this would be mine. What you're selling, the market positioning, the decisions your organization makes. Are you cutting costs? Are you using certain materials, and why are you doing that? What makes you unique, so your unique selling proposition in the marketplace. What kind of relationship the user or customer has with your brand, and then finally your personality. It's important to note that your brand isn't just what you say it is, it's also what people perceive you to be. Just like people, you can think that you're like, I don't know, Tom Cruise, but if your friends don't think you're Tom Cruise, you're not Tom Cruise. So a brand is made up of understanding who you are and then also understanding the interaction between the audience and you. When those don't align, it's called a brand gap. So who you think you are and who you're perceived to be need to be in alignment for you to have a really strong brand strategy. The good news is brands already exist. Everyone sitting here already has a brand. They just need to be discovered, and then brand strategy is about expressing in a way that's meaningful and making sure that your brand touch points, or every way in which the audience comes into contact with your company, are authentic. So I like visuals, so this is a visual representation of the brand process. And this is one of the tools we'll hand out to you at the end. This maps the overall things that make up a brand. So most of it over here, it's a lot of focus, but most of it I call archaeology, just to remind ourselves that this stuff already exists. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're not saying, what do I want people to think of me? It's like, who am I and what do they think of me? So we have company profiles, the basics, competitive environment, Just a reminder, we don't live in a vacuum. There's other, racers on the track, and there's other fields, other players on the field. Target audience, so our users, who are we talking to? Personality, so that's pretty obvious, just like how you are expressing yourself in terms of a personality. And then this last part, that's when you really start creating. So I call it strategy, or the big idea. That's when you start to distill all this other stuff. You come up with your core values, you come up with a tagline or a logo, you start to express your brand in these small, succinct, bite-sized pieces. So we'll go through this and unpack it a little bit at a time. Are there any questions at this point? I talk a little fast, so I need to remember to pause and ask. So company profile. So pretty obvious, but your product offering, your services, also your mission statement, like why do you exist? Why did you decide to start this company, or the founders? What are the benefits? Not just features, but also benefits. I like to remind us and my team and my client partners to not forget the intangible benefits. So for example, if it was a car, the feature would be it's got a V8 engine and it's got sports style handling. Those are features, those aren't benefits. The benefit is you feel like a badass when you drive it, right? And you can zip around and you feel like you might get to work faster. Whether or not you do get to work faster, that's a tangible benefit, right? Because you can measure it, but the intangible benefit is how it makes you feel. And these are the storytelling things, and this is really when you can start to capture the imagination of people. Studies have shown that we make decisions to buy with our heart, and then we look for facts to back up the decision that we've already made. So the more that you can capture someone's imagination, the better. And then opportunities for improvement, and just like understanding your current marketing efforts. So those are those brand touch points again, what you're already doing. So how about the competitive environment? This is pretty obvious. It's not just who's doing exactly what you're doing, but what other choices are out there for your customer. So especially with startups, sometimes you're reinventing the wheel. You're producing a solution that doesn't exist yet. Well, people have been solving that problem before you existed. So even though someone's not doing exactly what you're doing, it's important to understand what sort of solution they've cobbled together, because it's still an alternative. They could continue to do that. External influences, like do you have seasonal things, or if you're B2B, maybe your industry relies on the success of another industry. Could be the economy. Market positioning is, it's just easier if I show you a diagram. It's about understanding where you lie within the market. So these are all ways of making coffee, right? But if you are Dunkin' Donuts, you're probably not exactly competing with the hipster with his, I like the way all of the trendy and lower price ones are hipster things, with his ball jar mug. And you're also not competing with extractive coffee. It's just a completely different audience and appeal. And so by sectioning out your competitors who are closer to you, you can more carefully hone in on your message. Because selling to these people, if you're Dunkin' Donuts, it's probably not going to happen anyways. Again, it's about cutting off those sides of the marketing triangle and just getting right to the core of the meat of what's being said. And then also industry trends. So not that long ago, I worked with a women's health-related company, and I was doing some research of the competitors. Look at these logos. They're all purple, they're all squishy, and it's all like a woman's body that's, I don't know, it kind of looks like a woman's body. And it was very obvious that they were lumping all their audience together in one, and so we were able to take a more sophisticated, nuanced approach to how the brand got expressed. Marty Neumeier is another admired, revered branding guy. He wrote The Brand Gap, which is probably, if you read no other books about branding, I would read The Brand Gap. It's amazing. And it's also mostly like layouts that are black and white, cool design, and there's like 4 sentences per layout. But honestly, if you read it, you'll get the gist of branding in a heartbeat. So he reminds us when everybody zigs, zag. So user personas, who are we talking to? Well, this is not just a soapbox. There are other people out there. So it's important to notice not just who our primary audience is, but also our secondary audience. Secondary audience might be like a gatekeeper. If you're in B2B, it could be the receptionist who, when you send your literature or your marketing email or whatever it is, if they don't like it, they're just going to throw it in the trash and it'll never get to the CEO, who's the end decision maker. It would be a secondary audience. Or if you're making a product, someone who would buy it as a gift, that person is making a decision even though they're not the end user. And understanding the difference between those and not ignoring the secondary audiences, but not necessarily making them your largest pitch segment is a good thing to do. So we look at their demographics, lifestyle, motivations. I really like to remind us as digital marketers to look at their decision-making process, because a website is a conversation that someone has with your brand and you're not there. So the more that you can anticipate the questions that come to mind and the order in which they do, you can start to craft an experience through their website that is compelling and intuitive. And then what are their influencers? That could be everything from celebrities to fashion trends to other people in their life. For example, maybe if you're doing kids products, often they pitch kids products to people who are kids who are a little bit older, because kids always want to feel like they're older. So that would be an influencer, like an older sister or something like that. At GRAYBOX, we really get into this. In the digital world, the target audience is called a user, and so we use a user persona to define this. We do a lot of workshopping here with our client partners. So one way you might do that is, here's an expansion of the do, think, feel exercise. This is think, see, hear, say, feel, do, all the things that your user might be doing. And we would do one of these for each segment of your audience. And then another way you might do this is you might engage a group of people to do a sticky storm, which is basically everybody with sticky notes on a large sticky note. What are the first problems your customer is trying to solve? What are their first questions? Who's your competition? What's their decision-making criteria? And then this stuff gets distilled and put into what we call a user persona brief, or a user persona profile. So what does this look like when it's put into use? For example, I just pulled up Minute Maid. Some of the ways in which they're using user insights are, this is an emotional appeal of the brand. They're not showing you pictures of oranges, not talking about the nutrition or the facts about it. They're selling you a feeling. There's a handsome-looking father with his daughter. Oh, isn't that sweet? They're drinking orange juice. It's an emotional appeal. And then the brand recognition is reassuring. The logo is as it appears on the packaging. The logo is the upper corner. And then it's a soft sell. They're not touting the features. So often soft sell is associated with goods whose competitive advantage is quality and not price or speed or some other extremely tangible benefit. So one way you can start to think about this is imagine the questions that come into your user's head as they're considering whether or not they want to buy your product, and this can help you map out your user persona and their decision-making process. Any questions up to this point? Okay. Personality. So a lot of times we think that brands don't have personalities. They do. And even not having a personality is a personality. How about Bank of America? Talk about a brand that's just like snore. I don't even want to go in there. I bank at Bank of America and also Umpqua. And I kind of try to avoid Bank of America. I feel like they live in an aquarium, and are you laughing because you work there? Please tell me you don't work there. But I think it's a good example of they're trying to sell to everybody, and in doing so, they're selling nobody. On the other hand, this doesn't even look like a bank. This is Umpqua. They have like a guy listening. You like get on the internet there. They have coffee. There's no glass. Oh no, someone's going to steal the money. No, they're all under video cameras and stuff. There's other ways that they can be secure and have an authentic connection with their audience. So this is an example of a brand really embodying their personality. I don't know if you guys remember this old campaign. I'm probably dating myself, but there was the Mac and the PC guy. It's like the perfect example of how you would define your personality. Imagine that your brand is a person, and then what would they be like? And I know this sounds like a lot of like touchy-feely stuff, and I've been called a brand therapist before, but it's gonna help you tell a story. The people that you're talking to, again with the features and the benefits and the meat of what we're doing, studies show that people care. They want to know, they want to be entertained, they want a story, and they want you to tell them why they should care. There's this amazing TED Talk by Simon Sinek, How Leaders Inspire Action, and it's all about the golden circle. It talks about how the more you want to motivate somebody, the more you need to get closer to the meat of why they should basically give a crap. And on the outside, it's like what you want them to do or what you sell. We sell shoes. You put them on your feet. They're great. How do we make them? Oh, well, we use like these amazing materials. They breathe. They're lightweight. We use cool colors. Let's be real. Nobody buys Nike shoes for those reasons. We're there for the brand, right? The why, the just do it, the inspiration, the part of something bigger. We know that athletes use it. Anyways, he's amazing. It's a great talk. It's only 20 minutes. I highly recommend it. Okay, so we did all this archaeology. We figured out all these things about our brand. Now what? We have all this stuff, right? So we need to distill it and find what are the unifying concepts? What are the key messages? This is where your value proposition comes, the unique selling proposition. And it's an overused phrase, but if we unpack it, it's really important. It's unique in the marketplace. You're selling, you're trying to get them to do something, and it's a proposition. So you're backing it up with a reason to believe. You can't just say something without giving someone reasons to believe. And then in addition to this, there's often the voice, look, and feel. So you're starting to get into like the logo and the tagline aspect, the expression of the brand. We like to engage key stakeholders on the client side, client partner side. This is an example of one of the exercises that we do to help distill the brand into just some core ideas. There are about 130 adjectives, and then we lead management through a sorting exercise where there are things that we aren't at this end and things that we are at this end. And ultimately, it results in 8 core values that define the whole brand. I think I got ahead of myself. So this is just a graphical representation of a unique selling proposition. If they were Simon Sinek and they did the what we do, their tagline would be sports equipment for the gutsy athlete. I think a lot of times we feel like the tagline needs to explain what we do, but the most memorable brands that connect with us in the most visceral ways don't say anything about what they do. Apple, think different. What do you do? Make pencils? Could be anything, right? But instead, we love the brands that anticipate a conversation that's happening in the head of the audience and the brand, and they jump right into it. It kind of doesn't even make sense, like those ads earlier with the guy in the getaway car and the drawing the Loch Ness Monster. For example, yesterday you said tomorrow. At first, it doesn't mean anything, but when you think about it in terms of Nike, it fits perfectly into their just do it. They're needling you to get out there and exercise, and they're telling you that they understand your motivations, they understand who you are. They're very clearly making a stake in the ground of who they're talking to. They're not talking to my grandmother. They're not talking to maybe a little kid, but at a certain age when you start to get gritty about your exercise and really want to dig in your heels and be better at what you do. At GRAYBOX, we recently wrote taglines for some credit unions. These two are combining, and their auto lending organization needed a tagline, and so it needed to talk about auto lending specifically, needed to communicate that they exist to serve the needs of their members because they're credit unions, they're not banks, and then it needed to, their most unique selling proposition is extremely flexible financing options, and so we came up with options driven by you. So it's showing that you're at the center of it, it's highlighting the options, and using the word drive insinuates that there's cars involved, but it's not saying we're the best auto lending people out there. So I'd like to challenge you when you're doing this brand strategy stuff to really try to jump into the mind of the target audience and see how you can engage them in a conversation. Another thing I'd like to get out of the way is I firmly believe that rebranding is a myth. We're not rebranding things if everybody already has a brand. Unless you get hit by a train and reinvent your personality completely, you're not rebranding yourself. You might be doing a brand refresh. You might have a brand that has a brand gap where who people think you are and who you think you are not aligning, but it's only ever a brand refresh. And the way in which a brand is expressed is over brand touchpoints. I think I mentioned this a few times. And so the way in which you're expressing the brand might not match who you are. For example, once defined, smart brands don't necessarily rebrand, they just sort of evolve over time. Wow, that's really out of focus, but you can really see the John Deere over time. They've been around for a long time, it's still a Deere, they just sort of modernized it. So my wish for you, when you leave here today, is that you feel like you have some tools to define your brand, and then express your brand story strategically. So I have some worksheets for you, and I'll hand them out at the end so you can start to do a little bit of legwork on your own. You'll get this brand strategy process, which will walk you through it. And the information here can be summarized in something called a brand brief. It's kind of like a creative brief. What's a creative brief? This is creative brief. Seeing you're paying attention. A user persona brief is another thing that you can use to quickly define your audience. And I have a little example that walks you through this process here, which we use in GRAYBOX. And the user persona brief can be pretty customized because depending on how you're selling, there might be different inputs that you're thinking about in terms of who the audience is. And so I want you to know that by just doing these two small things, understanding your brand and who you're talking to, suddenly you have a brand manager on staff. And every time you make a business decision or you make a marketing decision, it's important to bring these two things to the table. Who you are, who your brand is, who your company is, and then who you're talking to. Put them at your board table. Without these two things, you're sort of just, you'll keep coming up with things and they won't feel right, and there'll be inconsistencies. So the more that you can bring these to every decision-making session, the more efficient you'll be. You've also heard me say a few times brand storytelling, and I'm talking about feelings and like fuzzy things. And I just want to remind us, I think that the reason why they call it his story is history. They don't call it his facts. Storytelling over the ages are what we remember. So I just want to, again, needle you to tell brand stories. And remind us that marketing is not an art. If you go to an art gallery, people are expressing themselves, they're communicating something, and they don't care if you get it. It's just some expression that means something to them. And so branding and marketing is about communicating with the other person. So if there's that brand gap and who you're talking to is not understanding what you're saying, it's not going to be effective. You're really here to be a communicator. I'd also like to encourage you guys to not hire someone off Fiverr, not hire a student, and don't cheap out on the brand strategy stuff. These are tools to help you get started, and whether or not you work with an agency like GRAYBOX or if you work with another professional, if you're going to spend money on anything as an entrepreneur, this is a good spot to do it because everything flows from here, and expressing your brand in an authentic way is a lot easier when you know who you are. That's one of my favorite cartoons. You might want to hire us. This is a strategy team. David is our director of strategy. Patricia is our art director. Kyle and I are both senior marketing strategists. I'm more the words and the thoughts. He's more the tactical SEO stuff, but together we create a full person. And this is Tiffany, our senior graphic designer and UX specialist here. So ultimately, we want to make you guys have your customers be fans. We want them to be proud to align themselves with your brand. Again, seeing if you're interested, if you're. You know, and people do put stickers on their laptop, which is like kind of forever, right? And what a wonderful declaration of alignment with a brand. And so why can't we all have that for our brands? So I'd like to remind us the wisdom of Woody Allen, who said 80% of success is showing up. So even just getting started with this brand strategy is going to get you way farther than if you hadn't thought of it at all. So I'm going to hand out these tools, and I think we went over how to use them, but I'll just do it again really quick. This explains the process, so you can go through and define this stuff and then come up with your brand brief. And there's some examples here of how you might communicate that within your agency. This is a target audience profile, so the persona name might be, you could call them Fred or something like that, but it's going to be more helpful to you if you think about your audience in terms of what is it that makes them different. Remember we talked about how we don't want to talk to everybody, so maybe one of your persona names is eco-minded moms, and maybe another one is up-and-coming millennials or something like that. So you want to start to look at your audience in terms of groups and then identify what their common motivations are. So you might want to understand where they work, their role within the company, some traits. Maybe they are cost-driven, maybe they're time poor, maybe they're, who knows, working on themselves or they don't care, whatever it is. What are their goals? what are their worries, so what keeps them up at night. Super good to know that, because you want to like maybe instill a little bit of that, but you don't want to needle people and make them scared. Nothing makes a customer dig their heels in the ground like scare tactics, so you don't want to do that too much. What's their buying process? So understanding, is your product or service an impulse buy? Or is this something that they research for a year? In which case you probably want to do a drip marketing campaign, you probably want to do leave behinds that are tangible, or you do a calendar or something like a koozie or something that's going to stick around for a long time. Whereas if it's a more impulse buy, you want to make sure that the call to actions on your site and stuff are super prominent and nothing is standing in the way of your shopping cart. Why are they buying? Channels talks about like, where do they get information about your stuff? Do they like to go on social media? Are they talking to their friends? Are they going on Yelp? Stuff like that. Pet peeves, super important to keep in mind. If they're time poor, maybe they really hate when they just want an answer and they're going to a website and the website is like, oh, explore our brand. And they're like, oh my God, I just need this one piece of information. So understanding what their pet peeves are can help you stir up the information that they want right away. And then I'm suggesting that there's 5 stars for brand awareness. Have they heard of you? So give each one of your audience profiles, maybe they don't know you at all, so they give you 1 star, or maybe they're already familiar with you. And then tech savviness. In our world, we really want to know how adept these people are using all the tech tools. So I don't know how many people showed up, I have 29 of these, so if there's leftovers, feel free to take more than one. And then lastly, I have the brand touchpoint worksheet for you. So a lot of times we don't realize all the ways in which our customers are coming into contact with us. Your voicemail. How about your invoice? Is it obnoxious and hard to read? Is your logo like squished and kind of like getting cut off in the corner? And then there's some obvious stuff in here too. So this can be, once you've defined your brand strategy and your user persona, you can use this to sort of jog your memory and come up with a list of things that you feel like you need to adjust. And that's it. Anybody have any questions or concerns? Yeah.
I'm wondering how specific you like to get with your user persona. You know, I mean, for like a huge company, I can see it just being like, eco moms. But if you're just starting out, that seems like it could be kind of hard to get your head around as being such a general audience. Mm-hmm. Like, how specific do you usually get?
As specific as you can without alienating anybody. What comes to mind, I worked with a startup who their tool, they wanted to make something that helped people design their vacations collaboratively. And at first they were selling to everybody, but the more research they did, they discovered that men don't really do this that much. Mostly women do this, and women who live in disparate places are more likely to use the product. So there was a certain level of, they probably went to college together and then moved. Otherwise, why would you be friends with a bunch of people all over the nation that you're going to vacation with? And so the more they looked into their audience, the more they started to get like a really clear picture of who they were talking to. So I just encourage you to do some market research and focus groups and look at your competitors and see what they're doing. And the tighter you can make your user persona, the easier it's going to be for you to advertise to these people. For example, on Facebook, you can start to do ads for like different interests and stuff like that. And you'll be more efficient with your dollars and your time and your energy. So if you can, pretty specific.
Okay. Is there like a cap or a max of how many personas to research or like?
Yeah, that's a great question. We like to say the sweet spot's like 5. You can have as much as 9, but don't tell anyone I said that. We had a B2B, a client partner who had 9, but it's because they were a really complex brand. And each of those segments had really different traits. But the sweet spot's about 5. 3 is fine.
So would an example of that be like Under Armour, for example, where you've got categories within the brand itself? You got like, they have like a hunting category, and they have like CrossFit type of category. Is that what you have different personas kind of divided based upon like the product line?
It might be. They probably, I'm guessing that they probably have their buyers identified. So even if it's hunting, it still might be the woman in the household that's buying the goods for, even though she doesn't hunt. I'm just guessing. or if it's like yoga apparel and then CrossFit, it might be the same type of person, and their buying decision-making process might be similar. Sometimes it's different product lines, but sometimes it's cross line. Yeah.
For an entrepreneur or someone who's just like starting this out on their own, like how would they go about doing market research or discovering brand personas?
Yeah. So we often start the process with just what we call a brand audit interview. We just sort of ask questions of ourselves. Who are we thinking is going to be wanting to use this product? What other ones are there out there? Are you working on something right now that you have in mind, or?
No, I was just curious.
Yeah. You can look at Yelp reviews. People really like to bitch online, and they have some really interesting insights as to what matters to them. Product reviews in general, you can go to a store that you've identified that kind of person would go to and just observe, or do they bring their kids with them? Did they drive there, or did they bike? Things like that. I guess you can just get kind of sleuthy about it if you're not going to hire like a market research firm. You can also do SurveyMonkey, or there's some reasonably priced like tools that will give you that information. On the high level, there's market research firms like Experian and Ipsos that are amazing and kind of creepy, that you can buy information. Like if you are a retail, your e-commerce company, you can put people's like Visa cards numbers in there, or their address, and it's anonymous, so they don't know who is who, but they can say of this bulk of like 10,000 people, 65% of them use iPhones, for example, because we can see that they have receipts with that credit card they bought iPhones. So if you're willing to invest some money, sometimes you can get some pretty interesting insights.
Is there a way to do keyword research to help identify that?
Yeah, for sure. So if you have a website, if you're an e-commerce client, for example, you could use tools like Moz or some of the other SEO tools out there to see what people are searching online to get to your website. And it might be different than you think. So for example, one of our client partners here sells furniture, and they like to think of their chairs as seats. And all of the copy on their website is about seating and seats. But people who are looking to buy a chair might not necessarily Google for a seat. So even though they think of their product that way, it's important that we address both chairs and seats. Yeah.
Inverse of this question, because I'm working with a very small niche market, mostly male. I don't know.
You want to branch out, or what do you?
This is the start, whether it goes a different direction, I don't know yet. I pretty much know the industry, but always willing to listen.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't get the question out of that.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I have something I guess kind of piggyback on this is like, what if you are a consultant but you don't know, like, it seems like I guess you kind of have to hustle a lot, especially in the beginning, so you want to be like a consultant to everybody, but do you have, I don't know, I guess tips or something to concentrate your focus on certain user types or something, like just as like a regular consultant or like an entrepreneur?
Yeah, for sure. So consulting is kind of cheat a little bit because it's a human, so it can be like what interests you in particular. Also, are there sweet spots in your experience? If you're in a particular regional area, are there industries that are common? Like here we have sports apparel and we have booze and stuff of that nature. So thinking of it as a Venn diagram and seeing like what you're interested in, what your background is, and what is desirable in the market can start to tell you where the sweet spots are. And then looking at the competitors, if no one out there is doing, I don't know, pet consulting, then maybe if you have a little bit of interest, maybe that would be a good place to go. In terms of just like marketing consultants, someone that I'm friends with, she changed her marketing consultancy to be just like B Corps, like all of her clients are B Corps and they're all eco. And then someone else is doing same thing, but she's just doing wellness and health. And at first it's a little bit scary to make those decisions, but when you position yourself as an expert, if I'm one of those industries and I could hire someone who's a generalist, or I could hire someone who specializes in my industry, it puts you at the top of their list of considerations. So I think it could be a good idea to niche yourself a little bit. Anyone else?
So you spoke about what the brand is that you think you're portraying and what people perceive you as.
Yeah.
As a small business with limited resources, what would you suggest is the best way to figure out what people see you as?
I would just ask your friends, or go to a networking event, and hand out your business card and say, what kind of personality do you think this expresses, or something like that. Its cheapest focus group is just to pester people.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You said that a big part of your investment when you're starting a company is to really put money into brand. That's very important. What kind of, is there a percentage, is there a rule of thumb in terms of what that means?
I would like to say that there is, but I know that even just defining a marketing budget is really nebulous, and there's all these articles and stuff out there that say a certain percentage of your sales should go towards marketing and this and that and the other, but I think a lot of it depends on whether or not you're introducing something new to the market, whether or not you're B2B or B2C, whether or not what you do is already sexy in and of itself, or if you're selling something that's kind of ho-hum. Mostly by understanding yourself, everything that you do will be a natural extension and a good communication of who you are. So if you just get that nailed down, and it might be that if you're a startup, you just do these on your own for now, and maybe in a year or two, you engage a professional. But it pays dividends. I guess it's not really an answer. Sorry. Anyone else? Yeah.
What suggestions do you have for reaching customers who don't know their customers? So if it's a new product like an iPod, or I guess there's an alternative, but some product that someone doesn't know that they're a customer.
Yeah. Well, for ideas, Alyssa mentioned keywords. So they're searching for something. They have some problem. Understanding the problem that you're solving on their end can help you think about how to position it. For example, if it's an iPod, they might be looking for small music storage, or travel music storage, or longer battery life, or I'm so tired of my CD skipping. Oh my God, that was a while ago, huh? Or maybe they are going somewhere to look for records or something like that, and you could position yourself with people who they have a similar interest, and you could have a point of sale there, or you could do a cross promotion or some kind of event sponsorship where you're aligning yourself with a brand or activity that already is exciting to your audience. Is that helpful? Anyone else?
When you're launching a new business, there are a lot of different activities that you have to do, develop the product and marketing research and branding and social media and a lot of different things, and all this very overwhelming. Each thing by itself is overwhelming, right? And when you start to look at each one of them, it's big task. So in terms of branding, what is the bare minimum that you would recommend, of must-haves for new business?
Yeah, I would sit down with tea or coffee or beer or whatever is your beverage of choice, and spend maybe probably about 2 hours on your own, maybe 3 hours, and then sleep on it and look at it the next day and validate it. Maybe show it to your business partner or friend. I would say that's the bare minimum, part A, and part B would be understanding who you're talking to. So even if you don't use this suggested format, just thinking about, the whole purpose of a business is to sell something to somebody else, and if you're not thinking about who they are and what they want, you're going to fail, right? So I would say that would be the bare minimum, which is kind of how I structured this talk. And I think the user persona, it could be something that, I think I didn't get your name, but we're talking about if you're a startup, how could you easily and sneakily sort of understand who your customer is? That could take a little bit more time, maybe over a month or a couple weeks. You just sort of maybe once a week you go and do something that puts you in contact with them. It could be a networking group, maybe they're gardeners and you go to the Lansu garden and you just hang out in their cafe and look at what people say, or maybe you go to a sporting goods store and see who comes in. And then in a month you should have both of those two things, and that should do you good, I think, as like a bare minimum. Or you could hire us. You don't have to worry about it at all. Anyone else?
How about brands that have one side of them? For example, you spoke about Nike, and then you have Nike Golf, which is very classy, and Nike Soccer, which is very aggressive. Like they literally have a skull like on their logo, on top of their logo, on the last World Cup. So if we can't really reinvent the brand, how can we walk around that to
Yeah.
actually?
So those are like sub-expressions of the main brand, right? So even though someone in a golf cart probably is popping wheelies and like blaring loud music on the golf course, there's still their version of like just do it. That to them, they're suiting up in some kind of armor. Maybe it's like a crisp polo, and maybe it's, you know, pants that allow them, I don't want to play golf, I'm just making this up, allow them to move or something, and they're getting in their own zone just the way the soccer or football player is doing the same way. So I guess understanding the spectrum on which your audiences might be, and looking for commonalities like that. Rich mentioned the, I don't remember what we were talking about. The Under Armour, right. So along that vein, for example, the golf people might be the spectrum of just do it, but subtly and gently. And then maybe on the other end, there's like football and soccer that's like just do it, F yeah. And along that spectrum, there might be extremes, and the F yeah people, that also might be CrossFit. It might be you know, other sports that are maybe like rock climbing or something like that, where there's more exhilaration and like passion and full exertion involved. And then on the yoga or the golf side, maybe that would also be yoga, Pilates, or like professional walking, if that's a thing. Like there's like walking gear. And so the more that you can silo by motivation and by personality type, the more it's going to be easy to talk to these people, because product lines evolve, right? But your brand isn't going to go anywhere. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, thank you.
Cool. You're welcome.
That was perfect.
Anyone else? I think we're at about time.